Greetings, YouTube and fellow traditionalist Catholics. This is Sergio Becerra II, and welcome back to my channel. And today we're going to be doing something brand new on the channel. So I thought it would be time to do some history of the Catholic Church. We're going to get into Catholic history, knowing the importance of our church. So I thought we start off with this book that I have right here, which I'll show in a minute. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the book that I'm going to be reading and then also get into the discussion at the same time. So we're going to start off with this first book right here, which I've had it for a long time. It's called A Dark History, The Popes. Vice, Murder, and Corruption in the Vatican. Now, over the centuries, there has been dark history and a lot of bad things that have happened within the papacy itself. So what we're going to do, so in every video that I'm going to be doing, we're going to be going over each chapter. Oh, and the author's name of the book is Brenda Ralph Lewis. You can barely see it on the bottom. Brenda Ralph Lewis. I know if you can see it through the glare. Through each video, I want to go through every single chapter, one by one. So chapter 1. Hang on. Chapter 1. The Cadaver Synod, the rule of harlots, and other Vatican scandals. So this will be the first chapter right here. And if you can see closely right there, that's Pope Benedict IX, one of the worst popes of the mid-11th century. So we're going to get into it. Starting chapter 1 is on page 9. So we're going to read this paragraph right here and then get into it. 1,000 years ago and more, political instability was rife in Rome. At that time, the image of the papacy was everything from outlandish and to weird to downright appalling. All kinds of dark deeds stuck to its name. Corruption, simony, nepotism, and lavish lifestyles were only part of it, and not necessarily the rest. So here we go. During the so-called papal pornocracy of the early 10th century, popes were being manipulated, exploited, and maneuvered for nefarious ends by mistresses who used them as pawns in their own power games with some justification. This era was also called the rule of the harlots. Now right here, in this next one, how to find a missing pope. So many popes were assassinated, mutilated, poisoned, or otherwise done away with that when one of them disappeared, never to be seen again. It was only natural to scan a list of violent explanations to find out what happened, what had happened to them. Death by strangulation and poison was a frequent cause. Had the vanished pope been hideously mutilated and therefore made unfit to appear in public? Had he made off with the papal cash box? Or should the brothers and other houses of ill repute be searched to find out if he was there? Often there was no clear answer, and explanations were left to gossip and rumor. So what it's saying is, what's going on with a lot of these popes that have happened, either killed, went missing, MIA, whatever. There have been popes that have been murdered, either by assassination, poison, whatever you want to name it. So I'm going to read this short paragraph that's in bold print, and it gives an example. Benedict IX, one of the most scandalous popes of the 11th century, was described as vile, foul, execrable, and a demon from hell in the disguise of a priest. St. Peter's Basilica in the St. Peter's St. Peter's Basilica in Vatican City was by tradition the burial site of St. Peter, the first bishop of Rome and first in line of papal succession. Here its dome rises above the facade begun in 1605 by the architect Carlo Maderna. So here's a picture of St. Peter's right here. This is our current basilica we know today. I'm pretty sure a lot of you would know that there was an original St. Peter's Basilica, the old St. Peter's Basilica, but it didn't look like something like this. It didn't have that dome that you see here because this basilica was constructed in the early 16th century under Julius II. The original St. Peter's Basilica kind of looked more like this, like in triangular shape, like you would see like you would see in some parishes or older basilicas. I'm pretty sure you can Google it up, and you can find a picture of the original St. Peter's Basilica because I know there's pictures out there. Even I have posted those pictures on social media. So let's get into the next page. The next page. Here we go. Let's start right here. A variety of violent ends. And here we have right here a picture of Pope John VIII right here that you can see. So let's get into this chapter. I mean, this long paragraph that we have right here, and we'll continue on. The variety of violent ends suffered by popes during the papal pontificacy was astonished. For example, in 882 CE, one pope, John VIII, failed to die significantly quickly from the poison administered to him. His assassins, losing patience, smashed his skull with hammers to move things along. A 10th century pope, Stephen IX, suffered horrific injuries when his eyes, lips, tongue, and hands were removed. Amazingly, the unfortunate man survived, but was never able to show his mutilated face in public again. Pope Benedict V decamped to Constantinople in 964 CE after seducing a young girl. Taking the papal treasury with him, Benedict was obviously a free-spending pontiff, for the money ran out before the end of the year, and he returned to Rome. He soon resumed his bad old habits, but was finally killed by a jealous husband who left more than 100 stab wounds on his body before throwing him into a cesspit. So, okay, before I go along, Pope John VIII had, well, there had been, so what's saying here that Pope John VIII had an attempt on his life, but survived. So significantly quickly from the poison administered. Okay, so he failed to die, but his assassins, losing patience, smashed his skull in with hammers. So John was killed by having hammers smashed to his skull. Well, I'm pretty sure in the next video I'm gonna get to another Roman pontiff that had his head smashed in with a hammer, but this was like way after John VIII's time and before Benedict IX's. In fact, there's one pope that is descended from John VIII and is a member of a well-known family that had control of Rome. And then it gets to Stephen the Sixth. Now, it says here that he had been suffered from injuries and his body mutilated, but no way he didn't want to be seen in public ever again. Excuse me. So that's what. So Stephen the Ninth, horrific injuries with his eyes, lips, tongue, and hands were removed. So he had been mutilated. Parts of his body were removed. So okay, they injured his eyes, but his lips, tongue, hands were removed. Lips, tongue, and hands. So lips, tongue, and hands gone. So whoever tried to kill him failed. Stephen survives by mutilation. Yeah, too mutilated to show his face ever again. And then here we go with Benedict V. So it looks like well, there have been popes that are known to have mistresses. One in particular that would be Alexander VI, which is later mentioned in this book. And I have another book that covers the whole Borgia family in particular. So it says here that Benedict V decamped to Constantinople in 964 by seducing a young girl. So I know that the papacy has been under fire for sex abuse scandals towards children, seducing a young girl. So I mean, I don't know how young this girl was that Benedict V had been trying to seduce, but knowing he would have wound up in a lot of trouble if so. So he leaves Rome for Constantinople with the treasury with him. Okay, so let me read back here. So he takes the treasury with him, the entire treasury. Benedict was obviously a free spending pontiff. So huge spender. That's what Benedict V was. So he was hiding out in Constantinople, which is the home of the Byzantine Empire, or obviously the Eastern Roman Empire, because the Eastern Roman Empire was still living on after the Western Roman Empire in Roman general had fallen in the late 5th century. So, for the money ran out before the end of the year. For the money ran out. So, he already spent all the money before the year was over and returned to Rome. And as soon as he had returned back to St. Peter's, he went back to his old habits and then finally killed by the jealous husband of this young girl who left him more than 100, killed him by 100 stabs. So Benedict V had been stabbed to death. So not only killed, but just before 100 stabs. I don't know what cesspit. I don't know what that means. Honestly, I apologize. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm just going over and make sure I didn't leave anything out. Okay, so John VIII had his head bashed in, but Benedict was a lot more different. So okay, so Benedict V doing inappropriate things with a young girl, ran off with the money from the treasury, stood in Constantinople for a year, returning back home to Rome, ended up getting stabbed 100 times. Next, okay, another pope, Boniface VI, was elected to the throne of St. Peter, even though he had twice been downgraded for immorality. As so often happens with events that took place significantly long ago to gather legends, Boniface either died of gout or was poisoned or deposed and sent away to allow another pope, Stephen VII, to take his place. Either way, Boniface disappeared from history, but he did so with suspicious rapidity. His reign lasted only 15 days. Afterwards, Stephen was let loose on the many powers and privileges of the papacy that he was expected to use for the benefit of his sponsors, the mighty house of Spoleto in central Italy and its domineering chatelaine, the Duchess Egletrude, the instigator of the scandalous cadaver synod of 897 CE. Stephen the Seventh. Oh, sorry, Stephen the Sixth. Um, yeah, there have been popes that have taken the name Stephen, but there's been some bit of confusion when it comes to people taking the name Stephen, which we'll get into later on. So Boniface the Sixth. So he's been accused of several immoralities during his pontificate. So nobody knows if he had died of gout or was poisoned by however whatsoever. But he's been long missing from history, is what it's saying. Either gout or was poisoned or deposed and sent away to allow another pope. Okay, so Boniface the Sixth is gone. No one knows what happens. Like I said, either poisoned, deposed, died of gout. So another pope that had taken his place. Now, we're gonna get to further. We're gonna get further deeper and deeper. We're gonna keep going on. Okay. So we may not go. So we may not go through all of chapter one. So we're gonna go through as little by little as possible. So let's keep continuing. Next, next on. One thing was certain, though, by the ninth century, the papacy and the popes were the playthings of noble families like the Spoletans, who controlled cities such as Venice, Milan, Genoa, Pisa, Florence, and Siena, among others. Through their wealth and influence, and their connections with armed militias, these families formed what amounted to a feudal aristocracy. They were generally a brutish lot, willing to bring the utmost violence and cruelty of the task of seizing and controlling the most prestigious office in the Christian world. Once achieved through their newfound power, could be ephemeral, ephemeral, for the reigns of some of their prodigies were very short indeed. There were, for example, 24 popes between 872 CE and 904 CE. The longest reign lasted a decade, and another four came and went within a year. There were 9 popes in 9 years between 896 CE and 904 CE. As many pontiffs were elected during the entire 20th century. This meant, of course, that the papal see of Rome was in a constant state of uproar as the struggle for the Vatican had to be fought over and over. So there are so okay, there have been a lot of powerful families that had in Italy that had control of some major cities. I know there's a lot of old Roman families that have lasted many centuries and probably don't exist anymore. There's here this one family that it just did mention, the Spoletans. Not really familiar with them, but once we get with the house of the family of the Counts of Tusculum, which is the family that both John the 12th and Benedict the Ninth came from, we're gonna get into that. So there have been popes that have come from powerful families that have had tremendous wealth, had control of some very powerful, very very well known cities, like mentioned right now, such as it's right here: Venice, Milan, Genoa, Pisa, Florence, and Siena. Those are well-known Italian cities, and some of these and the Spoletans had control of them. The like I mentioned with the House of Tusculum, they had control of Rome, which is the same as again popes John the 12th and Benedict the Ninth came from. But there's one pope that we're going to get into in the next video, the very first of the Tusculan popes from that same family. That would be Sergius III, who's the first Tusculan pope ever. Of course, his reign was known to be dark too. And we're going to get into another one right here. Okay, this paragraph known as the Deadly Duchess. Excuse me for a second. I've been preparing for this day, so I need some coffee to keep me going. Sorry, I gotta keep myself going. It's gonna be a while. So here we go. Stephen VI was one of the short-lived popes, promising the House of Spoleto in central Italy, a taste of papal power that turned out to be a brief 15 months. In 896 CE and 897 CE, Stephen was almost certainly insane, and his affliction appears to have been common knowledge in Rome. This, though, did not deter the Duchess Agiltrude, the Duchess Agiltrude. Sorry, I'm having a hard time trying to pronounce this. It's the name of a duchess, from foisting him onto the throne of St. Peter in July 896 CE. Agiltrude, it appears, had a special task for Pope Stephen, which involved wreaking revenge on her one-time enemy, the late Pope Formosus. Like most, if not all, legendary glamour heroines of history, Elgatrude was reputed to be very beautiful, with a sexy figure and long blonde hair. However, that may be, she was certainly a formidable woman with a fearsome taste for retribution. In 894 CE, Elgatrude took her young son, Lambert, to Rome to be confirmed by Pope Formosus as Holy Roman Emperor. Or so she expected. She found, though, that the venerable Formosus had ideas of his own. He preferred another claimant, Arnulf of Carinthia, a descendant of Charlemagne, the first Holy Roman Emperor. The first of the Holy Roman Emperors. The Pope realized that Algatrude was not going to stand by quietly and watch her son. The Pope realized that Algatrude was not going to stand by quietly and watch as her son was displaced, and knowing well the turbulent temper of the Spoletans, he saw trouble coming. So Formosus appealed to Arnulf for help. Arnulf, for his part, had no intention of being forced to give way to an underage upstart like Lambert or his implacable mother. He soon arrived with his army, sent Elgatrude packing back to Spoleto, and was crowned Holy Roman Emperor by Formosus on 22 February 896 CE. The new emperor at once set out to pursue Elgatrude, but before he could reach Spoleto, he suffered a paralyzing illness, possibly a stroke. Paul Formosus died 6 weeks later on 4 April 896 CE, reputedly poisoned by Elgatrude. By all accounts, he had been an admirable pope, well known for his care for the poor, his austere way of life, his chastity and devotion to prayer. all of them admirable Christian virtues and remarkable in an age of descendants, self-seeking, and barbarism. So, okay, I'll show you right here, this picture, this right here, where my thumb is, that's Pope Formosus. Now, we're going to see later on the cadaver synod, which from one of Formosus' successors, Stephen VI, would later have his body dug up and put it on display on trial for many accusations. So let me read this little bold print sentence right here. Formosus was rumored to have been poisoned before his death in 896 CE, but he suffered horrific injuries afterwards. Several of his fingers were cut off, and he was beheaded before being thrown in the Tiber River. Yeah, so that's what one of the things that did happen when the cadaver synod happened. As I did explain, Formosus' body was put on display, put on trial by Stephen VI. So yeah, and it says 3 of his fingers were cut off, which are the 3 blessing fingers on his right hand that he used to bless someone with. Those were removed, and it says his head. Well, the only thing I remembered from other sources that only Formosus' fingers were cut off. So you had some well-known woman that was a duchess, wants to put her son on the throne of the Holy Roman Empire. Formosus had other ideas, put someone else there, a direct descendant of Charlemagne, the very first Holy Roman Emperor. So, let me get this. Algertrude was not going to stand for it, would do anything to get back at Formosus. So, Algertrude was not going to stand by quietly and watch her son. Okay, so Algertrude wasn't going to stand by and put up with Formosus' decisions. So, Pope had other ideas, went after her, but her son had died soon with his army. Okay. Okay, so the Holy Roman Emperor got his armies, went after Algertrude, and sent her packing. I'm sorry, this is my first time having to do a history video ever. And I mean, I do online research, but having to go through like textbooks is a different thing. Okay, okay, so here we go. Let's finish here. But whatever his virtues, Formosus could not entirely escape the poisonous atmosphere of violence and intrigue that permeated the church in his time. It was all too easy to make enemies and so become exposed to their vengeance and bile. It was also possible that Formosus was too honest and outspoken for his own good. It was, for instance, an unwise move to oppose the election of Pope John VIII in 872 CE, particularly when Formosus himself had been among the candidates. It was bad policy, too, to have friends among Pope John's enemies who were perennially, perennially, perennially among Pope John's, uh, were perennially plotting against him. They were so intent on destroying him that they sought help for their nefarious, nefarious plans from the Muslim Saracens, who were the sworn enemies of Christianity. This was an age when the enemies of popes had a habit of disappearing or ending up dead. The writing on the wall was easy to read, and when his plotter friends fled from the papal court, Formosus fled with them. This, of course, implied that he was one of the conspirators. As a result, he was charged with some lurid crimes such as despoiling the cloisters in Rome and conspiring to destroy the papal see. Formosus was punished accordingly. In 878 CE, he Porto, he was excommunicated. The sentence was withdrawn, though when Formosus agreed to sign a declaration stating that he would never return to Rome or perform priestly duties. In addition, the Diocese of Porto in Portugal, where Formosus had been made cardinal bishop in 864 CE, was taken from him. So we're going to get into later on that Formosus had other accusations against him um, before his pontificate and then after his death. Now, wanted to get back here. Okay, no, okay, I'm sorry. Again, this is my first time having to do a history video. So let's keep going. All was forgiven for a while. Such such accusations and penalties made against him, an elderly man of proven probity and morality, were clearly ludicrous and had all the appearance of a put-up job. Fortunately, all was later forgiven. After the death of John VIII in 882 CE, his successor as Pope, Marius I, recalled Formosus to Rome from his refuge in western France and restored him to his diocese of Porto. 9 years later, Formosus was himself elected pope, and it was during his 5-year tenure that he made a very serious mistake. He crossed Duchess Elgertrude and the House of Spoleto. He also made other enemies over his policies as pope, which included trying to eradicate the influence of lay, non-ordinated people in church affairs. Quite possibly, this was why the death of one of her enemies and the incapacity of the other were not enough for Elgertrude. She had in mind something much more dramatic and gruesome. Once Formosus' successor as Pope, Boniface VI, had gone, the way was clear for Stephen VI, the candidate favored by Elgertrude and her equally malicious son Lambert to set up the plate and do their bidding. So once Formosus died, Boniface VI came into power. It looks like the Duchess would have her way whatsoever. What to do with Formosus and after his time. So here is a picture I'm going to show. This is the cadaver synod. If you look close as you can, the man pointing the finger at the deceased pope is Stephen VI, who called for the synod, and of course that's Formosus' body right there on the throne, well, put on trial for many accusations, fraud, other unethical things within the church. So we're gonna, so we're gonna stop right here for right now and continue on the next video, which would later lead to the cadaver synod. So mark it right there, page 15. Again, I must apologize. This is my first ever history video trying to explain the details of the dark times of the papacy. So, we've already learned already some popes that are known to be very bad, and some that were wrongfully murdered. We already saw what happened with John VIII, what happened to him, and then later on with Stephen IX, Benedict V, Boniface VI, and then now with Formosus, and then so right now we just barely got it. So we just learned a few the history of some popes that were known to be bad. Formosus's papacy had some I would say some bad times for him. I would say in my mind because accusations against him like fraud and other unethical things within unethical, not immoral, but unethical accusations against him. Some things that Formosus was accused of that kind of went against the canons, taking on other roles that were not part of his job as bishop, and then later with pope. So tell me what you think in this video. I'm sorry I took a long time, but if you all love history, I'm gonna keep on doing this because history is my thing, and I love history, especially with the church in general. All right, tell me what you think in the comments below. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell beside, and stay tuned for future updates. Okay, so we'll get into more with Pope Formosus in the next few pages of chapter 1. Chapter 1's going to take a while, and I didn't want to get into it that long. So we'll get into the next one. Take care now. Bye.